Great. Happy Tuesday, August 17th, everybody. This is the Filecoin Plus Community Governance call. Deep is on a much needed vacation. I know you guys are going to be missing his shining face and wonderful opinions. I'll hopefully be doing the best that I can to MC in his stead. So we're going to jump into this. A couple things on the agenda. It's a pretty typical flow. We're going to talk about some quantitative metrics like we usually do, just kind of check in on how things are going. There is a kind of process, LDN process change, issue number 217 that Deep and I have been working on. We posted that in GitHub. Feel free to go check that out and be reviewing that. We're going to cover the details of it in this call as well, and we'll have some time for an open forum. I also wanted to call out, if you weren't here 2 weeks ago, we've decided to increase the cadence of these governance calls. And so what that means is that 2 weeks from now, on August 31st, we're going to do both the 8 a.m. Pacific and the 4 p.m. Pacific. It's the same agenda for both of those calls. Feel free to come to both if you want to, but the goal there is to try and get the conversation's happening faster, because if you can't normally make, the other time of the call, sometimes you miss a governance call for 2 or 4 weeks at a time. It just makes it a little bit difficult to kind of have continuity of these conversations. So it'll be the same agenda for both of those. They'll still be recorded. Those recordings will be posted for you to see. I just wanted to let everybody know we'll be increasing that cadence. Hopefully that helps. So jumping in, stats from our interplanetary dashboard from 2 weeks ago to the current. We are driving down these times, again, a couple hours a week. That's been about the trend. Nothing shocking or significant here, but still we're making progress. So always great to see progress in the right direction. Couple specific things with our direct notary activity. There are 31 open issues in the client onboarding. 12 of those look like they are new apps with only one comment. And about 19 of those appear to be in review. This is just based on, do they have more than one comment? Some kind of dialogue started back and forth. There are 138 that have the label granted, and 26 of those in the last 14 days. So it's pretty exciting. In the last 14 days, we've cleared 26. So pat yourselves on the back if you have successfully gotten some of those direct notary applications across the finish line. That's great. And based on this data, I've kind of excluded the Glyph auto verifier because it's sitting at 384 verified clients. So taking out that outlier, it looks like we're hitting about 5.5 clients per notary. So again, some of these numbers are skewed a little bit from sort of historical repeat notaries compared to first-time notaries. So it's an average. Averages are always messy. Looking at the funnel, this is kind of where we're sitting right now. We are going to increase some of the tooling, which we'll talk about in a second, but based on the dashboard that we can see, sorry, we got a couple people jumping in the waiting room. We have about 11.5 petabytes of DataCap out to notaries. And it appears that we've got a pretty sharp drop off on what has made it to clients. And this is trying to count just for direct notaries, not counting for large data sets. And then we drop down again to about 0.4 petabytes in sealed deals. So looking at how we're doing with large data sets, it appears that there is only one brand new one that was posted just recently that doesn't have comments on it yet. That's Claywatch number 29. In review, I actually need to change this. This is should be 12 because having education issue number 20 just hit 7. So I'll go start that process. Again, just for some transparency, like some of the reasons these things take so long, the number of steps that myself or Deep need to go take as far as like posting some certain comments, pushing it through into the app. There is this kind of still very manual process to go from now that we have the 7 to actually getting it in front of the root key holders. Talk about that in a second. To call out some of those ones that are in review, you can see here some of those open issues and based on my quick rough count this morning, where they are sitting with the number of notaries that are signed on to them. So hopefully some of these jump out to you as ones that you've already signed on to be a notary for. It's great. Or ones that you don't recognize. Go check them out. They're all in that GitHub repo. There are 4 that are awaiting root key holders. Some of you have been asking about these 4 and kind of where they're sitting. OSC China, I think, is the newest one to get to the root key holders for approval, but there are 4 that are waiting on that process. So trying to take that same funnel and look at what's happening in DataCap overall, counting the large data sets, it really skews the metrics. It makes it very difficult to kind of parse out what is happening. So this is highlighting that we really need to invest in some better split out reporting so that we can isolate the funnel for large data sets compared to the funnel for direct notaries. So that's a thing that we have kind of on our plates to figure out how we want to spec that and what our scope of work should be. But as it stands, we still have a lot more DataCap in notaries that has yet to make the clients. Again, part of the reason this is skewed is because when we create that LDN notary, that entity is getting that significant first allocation of DataCap. So it kind of throws our numbers. So to that end, we're going to shift gears, talk about this process proposal, issue number 217. Deep and I have been kind of looking at this. We've been talking to a couple different people, both clients and notaries, people at PL and people at the foundation. And we want to, remind everyone the goal of the fil-plus program. One of them is to reduce the friction of onboarding clients to the network. So, finding ways, incentives, and mechanisms, both through social governance and through technical work to make this onboarding process faster and easier. Our time to DataCap for LDNs is still in the weeks or months range. Subsequent allocations are also blocking clients. You guys have seen this, you've felt this pain. So our main proposal in an effort to decrease that time to DataCap, this is if we were to really distill it down to the main changes. We will put all of the existing active notaries on a multi-sig at the time of the application. There'll be a mechanism for notaries to opt out. I want to make sure that's clear. There will be a way for notaries to opt out. We'll kind of do another issue and a call where people can opt out if they don't want to be included in this process. We can talk about that. But the goal then is to create that LDN faster because we won't be waiting on 7 notaries to do the back and forth diligence on the front end. We will just create the LDN more quickly. We will then decrease the threshold and include some additional automation for specifically the allocation requests. So one of the things that we've talked about is how the process flows, but even after we get those 7, we create the LDN, the client or the notary still needs to go then request the allocation again. And so there's just multiple manual steps. Our goal is to try and implement something by September to really increase this process so that we can review and revise it during Q4. We have a sort of 3-day design sprint scheduled. There'll be more information about that coming and some sessions that'll be open to notaries. But we want to kind of really look at what we have learned so far from Filecoin Plus this year and what changes we want to make in Q1 of 2022. That's right, 2021, almost in the books. So specifically diving into the details of this, again, all this is on GitHub, issue number 217. You can go see it. There's already been a couple comments, which are great. We'll kick off that conversation, but I just want to run through exactly what we're proposing. Client submits their LDN application. The governance team plus a bot will audit that application for basic completeness, which just means, did they enter something in all these fields? Right now, we can use a bot to do parts of that, to just say, they didn't put a response to this question. but an amount of that will still be a governance team member, just because we don't have a bot that is going to, check that the website is like fully active and legitimate. So there will be some governance team action. So that is a manual step, but we're just looking for basic completeness. Once that happens, the bot will create the multi-sig with all the notaries, again, aside from ones that opt out, with the threshold set to 2. So that will be more automated. Then it will propose that status to the root key holders, and the root key holders will approve it. Still a manual step. We're making some changes to root key holders that are going to increase their response time. So we're adding some root key holders, both at PL and the foundation, and an additional external root key holder. So we'll be able to prove those faster. So those 4 that are sitting waiting, hopefully by the end of August, we will have that in place. We've already started that messaging to get those root key holder changes. Root key holders approve, and then the bot will initiate the request to the LDN multisig for the first allocation. So again, this won't have to be a manual process of a governance member posting that very specifically formatted comment. The goal there is that when that first allocation comes in, the notaries can then jump in and perform the due diligence. They can review the application, they can ask those questions back and forth, and they can still sign the proposal in the app. When we hit that threshold of 2, they'll get their first allocation. The goal here is to more quickly get to that first allocation, with the intent being we can do better due diligence based on how they use that first allocation. So we'll have both what they said in the application and what they did with their first allocation of DataCap. And we can use those 2 things to then determine, should we make subsequent allocations? We're also proposing some additional automation here in that subsequent allocation process. Specifically, we're standing up a bot that can monitor available DataCap and automatically request once they've hit a threshold of how much they have used. This is something, again, that we can kind of test and tweak to see what percentage makes the most sense. Right now, the proposal is that we start at 75%. So once they have used 75%, the bot would kick off another subsequent request, and those notaries could then perform more due diligence and sign the subsequent request. Some of the key advantages to call out: there are fewer manual steps. So there's increased automation, which can help us scale over time. And there's increased automated auditing. So another piece that we are working on is when the bot kicks off the subsequent allocation, we could then go query our dashboard, pull some basic stats to the effect of how many deals did they seal, how many storage providers did they work with, and what was their percentage allocation. Basically, are they allocating 75% to one storage provider, which may indicate a breach of what they said they would do in their application and may cause further questions by notaries. We can get all of that in a comment in GitHub on the issue, so that when the notaries come to look at the subsequent allocation and approve it or not, they would more quickly be able to see a snapshot of behavior. So that's some of the increased automated auditing we're proposing. And if we approve this process, we can learn more. We'll be able to onboard more large dataset clients. We'll be able to learn more about both this process and the large dataset process. We can also learn more for Filecoin further down the line as well. What is working and bringing people to the biz dev side in Filecoin Plus, what's working once we've gotten a DataCap into helping them actually seal deals with storage providers, and it can help the whole network scale and learn more quickly. So we're going to open up to some of the discussion. Danny raised a couple points in the GitHub issue, specifically around the threshold of 2 and some of the regional requirements and considerations. So I was just going to pause here and see if Danny wanted to jump in and chat about what he put in the comment.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? Wave if you can.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, now start waving. So I generally agree with this from the work that I've seen. I think it's important that we kind of act as a system that lets people in fairly quickly and gets them on the on-ramp. Yeah, my only like micro concern is wondering whether we want to drop the number of notaries on the required on the multi-sig. And my main reasons about that was one, that doesn't seem to necessarily be one of the blockers on this, and two, like 2 signatures is kind of the minimum, and I'm not sure that we would be able to get a consensus for a process to increase it, right? I think that we can go down if it's still a problem, but it's going to be hard to ramp it back up. Or if we do go down to 2, maybe we should sketch out reasons why we might want to bring that up in the future so that we can make that process a lot quicker. I'm done.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Danny. Some other open questions if anyone wants to unmute, raise their hand.
Oh, without hogging the meeting, I remember my other point, which is the geographical diversity. Again, 2, which, well, there's 2 parts of this. 2 is, again, sort of the minimum. Do we say that we've got to be from 2 regions? And secondly, one of the things that I've definitely hit is I'm getting a lot of requests outside of my region and having to sort of oversee requests from outside my region, which is fine, but I sort of feel like I cannot always give them the due diligence that I should be able to, or someone with a native language or an understanding of the region. And so I wonder if we should have a criteria in there for 1 person from the region of origin. And as I pointed out, I think in the GitHub, having said that, one of the challenges is how do we establish that? I don't think that's something that the bot will be able to know. So that would have to be something that the maybe governance steps in on. That's
so
really
I see. Yeah, thank you. I see 2 hands. I'm going to get to them, but I wanted to, because we have been thinking about this, I wanted to speak to the technical side about the regional requirements. We are technically able to put in your region for each notary address, and to also effectively say, these regions need to either not be the same. So we need, representation from different regions. It's a little bit harder to force the bot to require a specific region, because then we need to basically, when we create the multi-sig, this would be not impossible, but we would need to say this application is coming from this region. So put in, this country, this region code, and only allow if one of the notaries is from that. So it's a little harder to say we need a region from the application. It's easier to say we need diverse geographic regions. So all good. Okay, so let's say Zehu Chen, I think you were the first to raise your hand. If you want to unmute.
Yeah. So for the previous case, we have seen so far like some application that like it requires miners from like multiple regions, right? So it might like require miners from like Europe and the United States. So in this kind of case, at least for the like 2 signatures, they need to have, they should have one from United States and one from the Europe, right? But also maybe in the future, some cases like require miners from all over the world, and that in that kind of case, I do think that it requires like more than 2 signatures, because for different regions, different laws, and it had like different requirements on minors. So I don't think it should be like stick to 2, but it should be like according to the requirement for the minors, and also a source of the source of the data. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you. So it sounds like, just to make sure, check for understanding, based on the application and where they are proposing to make their storage provider deals, we would want to potentially think about changing both the threshold and the geographic requirement, so that if a client is, or if a client is saying we're going to make deals in this region and this region, that we should have notaries from those two regions represented. Is that, am I catching what your point?
Yeah.
Okay. Eric?
Okay, hi, good evening, guys. So can I have a shared screens? So I would like to show you guys something with the LDN case. Hello? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I think I was able to just make you a co-host, so you should be able to present. Yes, I can see your screen.
Oh, okay. So, because we don't have the LDN dashboard. Actually, we have done this sheet manually. So right now we have total 22 LDN. That's total request for 50 PBs, right? So for us as a notary, so we would like to support some project, and we said we would like to support this project, and we have the multi-sign. But actually, that's too complicated for us, because there was so many projects. Maybe we will miss it. Some we raise our hand, say I will support this project, and then but too many emails come in, and we cannot find out which project we have supported. So right now I have done this sheet. It's so everybody can share, can see all the project here, and someone got 7 notaries and someone got 2 or maybe 5, but someone they don't have people to support. So in my opinion, is there any dashboard or some program apps online to reminder the notary to sign for the first time for the LDN case? And then after the miner stores the data into the Filecoin, and they will remind you again for the second or the third to assign. So that's what I propose. So I would like to share this sheet by the Google Cloud after this meeting as a reminder, or maybe I will send it to the Slack with the notary channel. But this is what I can do to help everybody to check with the LDN. Because I was chat to Fei Yan, so he said, so, you know, we would like to go through our project, but I need to wait some notary to sign, or I need to wait a rookie holder to give me another progress. So this is I think this is a major issue to delays the time, and the project not looks so efficiency. Yes, that's what I done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, it's funny because that looks very similar to a Google Sheet that I have put together for a very similar issue. And so I think a lot of us, and you know, GitHub has a lot of strengths and helps us in a lot of ways, but the notifications and the kind of project tracking are really challenging. And you know, some of these issues are now at 40 plus comments, and it's just really hard to stay on top of who's, you know, where a project is. So that is also a thing that, you know, this September, Deep and I have a big hope for the Design Summit is to talk more about what would a major app overhaul look like that brings a lot of this into one place. You know, the notification, the discussion, the tracking, so that you could more easily see, so that it's less manual. You know, when an application comes in, we'd be able to do more automation on labeling and notifying notaries that it was in. When comments got made, we could put, we could just build a lot more robust tooling by kind of decoupling from GitHub. So that's the thing that we really care about speccing out, but that's a longer term kind of project. And our hope is that we can make a couple low technical lift changes in the near term to sort of unblock some of these people and learn from making these changes to inform what we would do. So I like this, this tooling that you're using, the spreadsheet. And I think a number of us have various ways that, the notaries are doing their bookkeeping for their own diligence. And so we will want to, help see and learn from all of you as we design this to say, like, what tooling would we want for just yourself as a direct notary in a space? So let's see if there are some other, yes, there's some thumbs up and enthusiasm. I think AI will have a hard time replacing Danny, having worked with him now. His brain is very hard to map. So it's gonna be some challenging machine learning to solve that problem. Are there other, it sounds like one of the biggest kind of things that people have wanted to question is around the threshold of 2 and it being low. And this was something that we kind of landed on 2 as just a reach goal to say, what is, 1 feels too low, not enough due diligence. Requiring 7 to sign on and then having a threshold of 4 felt like it was going too slow. And one of the things that we were seeing was some of this bystander effect, where people would kind of think, well, another notary will sign that, or another notary will do that due diligence. And so one of the hypotheses, by making the threshold 2, it's either you or one other person that are going to audit and review that application. So it's very hard for you to say, well, someone else will do it, I'll just like sign the message. So that was one of the kind of the ideas going into the number being 2. Faye has a question in the chat for a couple people about confirming address. I think, Faye, I'm not sure that we need people to confirm their address. I think that is this for, which LDN is this? I think that 3000 Rice is waiting on the root key holders, but we'll double check. I think that one needs to be signed. Yeah. Other open discussion questions about this proposal. Yes, it has been 2 weeks to get the root key holders to sign things. And part of it is there have been some messages signed outside of the app, which then changes how the approval counts happen. So that's part of why we are trying to add some different root key holders that are more directly involved and engaged in the program. As it is, we currently only have 3 root key holders with a threshold of 2, and 2 of those root key holders are outside of our organizations. So it makes it challenging to get messages signed. So yes, it is a blocker, and it is, hopefully the proposals have been sent as of yesterday. Hopefully by the end of this week, those proposals will be approved to add new root key holders. Unfortunately, that's the best that I can tell you. This is just one of the hurdles in a trustless system. Any other questions, discussion, have thoughts on this proposal? Does it seem like it is safe enough to push forward and at least keep speccing out the scope of work? Share my screen again. That's a good question about the LDNs. Will they be in the same process? I think if we come back up to here, the 4 that are awaiting the root key holders will probably, I'm not sure if we would stand up, we would have to stand up a new notary to change the threshold. So it may be that the 4 that get to this point that are awaiting root key holders would follow this existing process of having 7 notaries on the multi-sig and a threshold of 4. We could discuss that. It would probably be that if we were to, implement this in time, it would be applications that have not yet had an LDN notary created would then follow this process. Does that answer your question? Yep. Yes, I feel the frustration. Okay. So advantages. At this point, that was the agenda items that I had. Wanted to turn it over if there were some other open forum topics for discussion. Some things that have been discussed or brought up in the past around various flagging of issues when there is something suspicious that happens. That's something that Deep and I have been looking into in our longer design summit, but don't yet have any proposals for what we, the process that we want to follow in that case. So if there are other things that are top of mind for people, happy to turn over the mic. Sure, go for it.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I represent my organization, Binhe Lab. A few days ago, Metric Storage expressed that they want to do something for notaries, such as output some periodical reports, but they found that the current data website has a little data on the problem. For example, fil-plus info. They found that it is difficult to connect this data about notaries. So is there any advice?
Yes, I just put it in the chat. We are getting, so the interplanetary, this dashboard with these various sections, we're getting APIs for these with some different endpoints to be able to pull this information. Not yet sure fully where we are in that process. I think that when we get it completed and finalized, we'll post it in, probably post it in Slack and also in the Notary Governance, maybe as an issue. Again, this is kind of where some of those conversations can be a little tricky, but yes, we're getting APIs available for those. We're currently testing them with the fil-plus app team, Pico, so that they can pull this information and make those audits, like I was talking about earlier, those automated audit snapshot comments. So we're using that as a mechanism to test those APIs. So stay tuned, those are on the way. And did you have other questions? Your hand is still up. I wanted to make sure if you had another question we got to you. Okay, no, otherwise let's go to Danny.
Sorry, couldn't find the mute button. So I guess one of this was just a small thing, which is when I'm doing due diligence on the small DataCap applications, one of the things that is a little hard to establish is the only contact details we have are the GitHub accounts, and the vast majority of the applications that I've seen, there's no history to the GitHub account. There's very little public details. I wonder if we should include a contact email address in that first form. I mean, except we'd have to obfuscate it, wouldn't we? Because it would be public. Maybe I've answered my own question. Anyway, it just means that the manual step that I've had to do is to say to someone, do you have a contact address at that particular service? Because I think sometimes people are applying on behalf of a large company when they haven't yet necessarily sort of got permission. They're doing it kind of in anticipation of sorting out a deal with that website or company.
Anyone else on the call have some best practice or tricks? I've seen a few different things. I'd love to hear from you guys who are doing it directly. I think the most common way that I have seen this is the notary will put a comment saying, can you send me, here's my email address, can you send me some more information? And then kind of some of that goes offline. To some extent, there is then sort of an expectation or an intention that certain salient details would be brought back to GitHub. And so I think in an ideal world, the notary would come back to GitHub and have another comment reply to the effect of, I had a direct email with this person, this is what we discussed, this is what they were able to answer these questions, so that we still have that transparency. But some of this information is to a certain extent more private and sensitive, and so some things do remain in the hands of the notary, but then it can be made available during a subsequent audit if there is a dispute or a question or the next election cycle. I think some of this is captured in some of the README docs on the GitHub issues, but those can get long and not everyone reads all of the README. So best practices could be an interesting place for it. Any other discussion topics that you wanted to bring up? I want to jump back then to call your attention to some of these other LDNs that are in review. If you wanted to take some time, go check out some of these. We've heard from some of these clients on calls before, and our hope is to get some more clients in the future to come to these notary calls. Additionally, there are, as we said, there's like 12 new applications. Some of those might be sitting with you, and the notification process in GitHub is not the best. So if you want to take a chance, go check out if you have any sitting and waiting, or if there are any comments that might need to be prodded through. And then the last kind of thing to call out, that the next time we have this call on August 31st, it will happen in 2 time slots. We're going to update the Google Community Calendar to reflect that. And again, it should be the same agenda for both of those time slots. The discussion might be different based on who's in the room, but they'll be recorded and saved, and you can go back and watch both or one of the meetings. If there's nothing else, I'm gonna stop the recording, give you guys 15 minutes back. Thank you all for your time. Have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday, wherever you are. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.